Hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday's ESPN FC Live. My name's Mark Donaldson, alongside Janusz Mihalik, Luis Miguel Echegaray, and Rob Dawson. The Premier League is our feature for the next half hour. And we're going to start with the game of the weekend, Manchester City against Chelsea. And Rob, I want to start with you because back in mid-August, Manchester City went to Stamford Bridge and won by 2-0. Everything was rosy in the garden. It was expected. It was just more of the same. Now it's fifth against fourth. For anybody who has maybe missed the last 6 months, been elsewhere and paid no attention, what has happened to Manchester City and Chelsea in the meantime between that game at Stamford Bridge and the game on Saturday at the Etihad?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very differing paths, really. I mean, like you say, it was kind of expected, wasn't it, that City were going to go to Stamford Bridge on the opening weekend and win, which they did. Since then, really, City have really struggled for a number of different reasons, with injuries particularly. Went through an awful run of results kind of November, December time, and has left them really scrabbling to make the top four this season rather than challenging for the title, which is what they've always done. Chelsea, on the other hand, I think there was quite a lot of worry about them in pre-season, about some of the results they had, particularly they played City in pre-season and were beaten really heavily. Obviously lost that first game at Stamford Bridge to City. Again, there was kind of alarm bells. Is Maresca the right man? Is their recruitment policy right? What's going wrong? What do they need to do? And quietly, Maresca kind of gave them some solidarity, gave them an identity, some consistency with selection. And at one point before Christmas, we're being talked about as title contenders. That they've slipped up a little bit over Christmas. City are kind of working their way back towards being more like the team that we would expect. So I think the game at the Etihad at the moment, if you look at it on the face of it, is quite an evenly matched game. It's quite unpredictable, really. I mean, in the past, you would expect City to win that game relatively comfortably, but I don't think you can say that anymore.
Janusz, Rob's just used the word unpredictable, and he's spot on. So which Manchester City are we getting? Are we getting the one that scored 23 goals and conceded only 4 during 6 games unbeaten, then went 2-0 up in Paris? Or are we getting the team that went 2-0 up in Paris, conceded 4, and have now had 9 games this season when they've taken the lead in all competitions and not won the fixture?
I hope that it's a desperate Manchester City team, because we haven't seen that, have we? When I say desperation, I don't know if that's the good word, but a hungry team, and that's that to me, Rob is right. When you look at the two teams, what the difference is, right? High expectations, low expectations. Young and hungry Chelsea team, right? That has legs, and Manchester City that maybe a little bit of a hunger is gone. Certainly the legs and injuries and physicality from that game is gone. But Manchester City at their best, forget the quality in how they played, because that's obviously, you don't win so many trophies if you can't play football. But I mean, they were hungry all the time. That was the team that, when they went up 1-0, it was all of a sudden 2-3, 4-0 after that. And we were always, I remember, kind of waiting, like, are they ever going to drop off with that desperation and hunger to win the ball back after they lost possession? So I'm just hoping that it's the one. I mean, midweek, that's a massive blow, right? I mean, losing a lead like that, it's incredibly tough. But I think having Chelsea at home, I suppose this is I almost want to say it's the last moment, given the schedule that they have.
Cole Palmer. Facing a Manchester City side that might only have one recognised centre-back playing. We'll get on to the new signings shortly with the three of you. It's not a case of here's what you could have had, because when Pep let him go and sold him to Chelsea, he was down the pecking order at Manchester City. Is it a game for him that he's thinking, I can really show them here? Or is it a game that he's already shown City with what he's done for Chelsea, and it's up to him? He's the key as to whether Chelsea have a chance of winning this game.
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, he's only a human being, and obviously he knows his own history, and he knows what wasn't the case when he was with Manchester City and why Pep Guardiola eventually allowed him to leave. And obviously the story now is newly written with Chelsea, a tremendous acquisition. Last season, to me, was the signing of the season, of course, of everything that Cole Palmer did for Chelsea. So I think, on the back of it, he's thinking, yeah, I'm coming back. to a place that used to be my home, and I want to show everybody what they've missed. But I think the bigger picture here, MD, is about what Chelsea can do here at the Etihad, and to try and prove, for the sake of the squad, not just Cole Palmer, but Enzo Maresca in his first season with Chelsea, that they belong in a Champions League spot, and they probably want to make amends from the beginning of the season when they lost 2-0. This is a big game for Chelsea as much as it is for Manchester City, because after beating Wolves on Monday, they want to rectify a few things because they hadn't won in 5 matches before that. They want to continue and prolong. And here's the other thing, by the way. I think that this is a moment where the likes of Noni Madueke as well can come in and help Cole Palmer become a lethal threat against this Manchester City side. And I agree with Janusz, by the way. I think this is a huge game for Manchester City, because the next few matches are very difficult for them, given of the schedule. But now Enzo Maresca comes to the Etihad, a place that he also knows as well, because he was also part of Pep Guardiola's coaching team. And he wants to tell his team, we can do this. There's a few tricky situations. I'm sure we'll talk about the squad in a minute, but this is a massive game for both. And Cole Palmer, absolutely. He wants to make amends and tell City fans, this is what you missed.
Yeah, Marcos Alonso's 90th minute winner was the last time that Chelsea won at the Etihad. That was back in May 2021, nearly 3.5 years ago, as he does maths quickly in his head. Okay, Rob, you were at Manchester City's training ground this morning. How was Pep, and did he give any clues as to whether any of his new signings potentially may feature? Because they've spent a lot of money to get these 3 new players.
Yeah, I mean, Pep confirmed that all 3 of those new players, Kusanov, Vitaraj and Marmoush, will all be in the squad against Chelsea. Obviously wouldn't confirm which of those will be in the starting 11. Judging on experience alone, you would suggest that Marmoush is the most likely to settle in quicker because he's older, he's 25, he's got experience in the Bundesliga, but it's not in those front positions that City have got a problem with injuries. It's at the back. You mentioned there before that City really have only got one fully fit centre-back in Manu Akanji, because Ruben Dias, who had just come back against Ipswich, only lasted until half-time against PSG, and is now ruled out because he's got an abductor injury. So it may be that they have to throw one of those young defenders in, either Kusanov or Vitaraj, straight away. Listening to City, they think that Kusanov is ahead of Vitaraj in terms of development. He's a little bit older. He's 20 years old. He has got experience in Europe, having played for Lons. Vitaraj is coming straight from Brazil, from Palmeiras. I think he's played about 20 senior games, so really, really inexperienced. So what may happen is you may find that Pep Guardiola has to throw Kusanov straight into the City team against Chelsea. It's certainly not the way that he would have planned it out, because he's usually like to kind of ease these young kids in gently and then sort of build up their confidence, build up their familiarity with the system, and then give them a run in the team. But with the injuries at the back, the problems he's got, it may not be possible. So you may find a situation where Kusanov, who is a natural centre-back, may have to start the game at right back, possibly Vardiol and maybe a Kanji at centre-half with a makeshift left-back in Rico Lewis or someone like that. That tells you exactly how many problems Pep and City have got, because he really doesn't want to have to go into a massive game against Chelsea at the Etihad, chucking a kid into his Premier League debut, but he may not have any choice.
Yeah, and as Rob says, Janusz, could it be a case of sink or swim? Because sometimes you get time to make your mark and you're there and you're ready when called upon. But look, we don't know the character of the 3 players. We're not around them on a weekly or a daily basis. But sometimes with players, being chucked in isn't the worst thing in the world if that does happen for Cristiano.
I'm on Rob. I can see that, because Nunes at that right back, he had some issues, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Got done by. Obviously, I felt for him a little bit, in Europe. So he may, but it's an intricate system that you do have to learn a little bit, right? A lot of exchanging, a lot of coming inside. A big ask. I don't know if either of those players in the back are ready for it, but he may have to, and on top of that, City take a lot of risks, right? Defensively, we know that in defensive transition, they're not very good. So throwing in one or both, if someone thinks that, would be crazy. I could see it, though, the way Rob explained it. It's quite possible that Kusanov may be the one. I think Marmoush, I wouldn't be surprised if he is coming in. It all depends, how he's going to play. Is it going to be just Kovacic holding really, and you're going to have four in front with Haaland in front of that, right? Because Marmoush could sort of play that, next to De Bruyne central, when Bernardo Silva goes a little bit deeper. So I don't foresee Marmoush playing wide in that situation. I'm not saying that he can't, but I think he'd be playing somewhere in behind Haaland if he starts. So that's the way I see it. That midfield is going to be crucial because I almost think that, Chelsea with Caicedo, and I don't know about you guys, but I like the way Dewsbury Hall played. He is technical. He can defend as well. I think Dewsbury Hall allows Cole Palmer to kind of go even a little bit further forward, not to drop as deep. And you have kind of two playmakers in there. So I like that from Maresca, who will know how to play against Pep, at least on paper.
And he'll fancy his chances of scoring because City and clean sheets haven't been anywhere near as often as they were under previous championship challenges and title wins under Pep Guardiola. LME, I know you've spoken online and with ESPN Deportes about Victor Reich, but I want to talk about Marmoush with you and follow on to something that Janusz has just said about the potential of him playing up front, but maybe just playing off Erling Haaland. He's got 15 goals and 17 starts for Eintracht this season, and he's played just off the left. He's played as a central striker as well. Does this now give Pep the option of playing a 2 with him and Haaland, or, as Janusz says, maybe playing him just off Haaland? And if so, who's going to make way for Marmoush to come in and start?
Yeah, it's a good question, MD, and it's a good problem to have for Pep Guardiola. And before we get into it, massive credit, and this is coming from Marmoush himself, to Dino Tutmoller from Eintracht Frankfurt, who helped him. He helped the Egyptian attacker become this versatile because, as you mentioned, he is a very versatile player. He's a lethal goal scorer. He's very, very fast. He's comfortable playing as a 10. He can play as well on the wing, but he does love to score, specifically in the strike position. To answer your question, in this particular game, per to what Rob was saying earlier, out of the three, I obviously see him coming in maybe later in the stages of the game. And I don't necessarily think that he needs to replace Erling Haaland, but rather play with him. I think naturally, instinctively, you would think that, it would be somewhere in the likes of replacing somebody like Phil Foden. But Phil Foden, who's in such a good form, depending how he does against Chelsea, he can also, Marmoush, come in right behind the striker with Haaland, specifically if City are trying to just win this game and Chelsea's giving it to them. The left side is very populated, right, with Savio and Doku and even Jack Grealish trying to come in as an internal inverted winger. So I would imagine that in the long run, as the team continues to get used to Marmoush and vice versa, I would imagine, to me, that he's fighting for that Phil Foden competitive role, or maybe even alleviate a lot of Erling Haaland. I will say this, though, from the three players that have come in as well, we have to remember something. This isn't just about January and what City need to do this season. Manchester City have the 5th oldest squad in the Premier League. And because of these arrivals, Pep Guardiola knows that the future needs to happen sooner rather than later. Marmoush is a wonderful Swiss Army knife. I can't wait to see him play in the Premier League.
Yeah, before we get predictions, just one final one to you, Rob. And it hasn't really been spoken about too much since Marmoush signed. Could he maybe play the role of like a Julian Alvarez or just someone when he's up top with Erling Haaland, or as Janusz says, maybe playing just in behind him? Could this be good for Erling Haaland? Because he's got 17 goals in 22 Premier League games this season. We kind of forget that because there's been a lot of games where he hasn't really been that involved just because they haven't been able to give him service. But when you've got someone as good as Marmoush is, could this be a really good signing, not just for Man City, but for Erling Haaland as well?
Yeah, I think City certainly see Marmoush as a Julian Alvarez replacement. I mean, the whispers kind of behind the scenes at City is that they probably should have done a similar deal in the summer when they had the money for Alvarez. They thought that Oscar Bob was going to take that place. Oscar Bob obviously then gets injured on the eve of the Premier League season and leaves a massive hole. So City thought they should have replaced Alvarez in the summer. They've waited until January. They certainly see Marmoush filling almost that kind of second goal scorer role behind Erling Haaland that Alvarez filled so wonderfully in his couple of seasons at City. He averaged about a goal every 3 games for City, which is incredible, really, given that he wasn't always a starter. And City certainly see that Marmoush, or hope that Marmoush can kind of replicate that form. In terms of him and Erling Haaland, that will be all about how quickly they can come up with some kind of connection. If they can develop a partnership, whether it's Haaland at number 9 and Marmoush maybe withdrawn a little bit at number 10, or maybe Marmoush is out wide, or even they're playing them up front together, whether Pep Guardiola decides to play them together or not will all be about how quickly they can come up with a connection. Because if they come up with a relationship, if they hit it off on the training pitch and replicate that on the pitch, Pep Guardiola will want to use that in games. So really, it's entirely up to them. I think as they start out, what you'll see is Haaland or Marmoush, and then it will be up to them to develop that as time goes on. And if it develops into a striking partnership, then that will be great news for Marmoush and also great news for Erling Haaland.
Okay, let's get to predictions for this one. Only Liverpool have scored more goals. They've had 50 in the Premier League than Manchester City and Chelsea, who've got 44 each. So we're going to get goals, lots of goals in these predictions from Janusz, aren't we?
2-1 to Manchester City.
I'll take that. 3 goals, fine. Just need goals. Don't care who for. LME.
Yep, completely agree. I think it's going to be 2-1 to City. Romeo Lavia's absence really worries me for Chelsea.
And Rob.
I'm slightly worried about City. I think Chelsea have got the players to really hurt them, particularly at the Etihad, and I think it may be Chelsea 3, City 2.
I'll sit on the fence with a 2-2 draw. So we've got all bases covered. We shall reconvene next Wednesday, and we can say who has come out on top. Okay, some of the other games, we've got 3 more I want to focus on. Fulham against Manchester United. I want to start with you, Rob, simply because you were at Old Trafford on Thursday night. Yeah, that was interesting. And United against Rangers. So how's the wallpaper as far as papering over the cracks is concerned? Or is it another Southampton where, hey, a win's a win, move on? Because Fulham's a decent side. What are you expecting from this one?
Again, judging by the recent performances, and I include the wins over Southampton and Rangers in that, I would worry for Man United at Fulham. I think they're going to find it easier to play away from Old Trafford than actually playing home games at the moment. Amorim has talked about that really recently, just said that the anxiety in the stadium is not helping the players. So maybe they'll feel a little bit more freedom playing away from home at Craven Cottage. But Sunday at 7 p.m, under the lights at Craven Cottage against a Fulham team who are really, really well organised, incredibly well coached by Marco Silva. He will have been looking all week about how you can pick holes in this 3-4-3 system that Amorim is trying to implement at Man United. He will know that he's trying to do it without the players that he needs to make it work. And he will have spotted what other managers have spotted in the last couple of weeks. The holes that were at either side of those 2 midfielders that were brutally exposed by the likes of Newcastle, Bournemouth, Nottingham Forest, Brighton, are likely still to be there against Fulham. And Marco Silva is such a good coach that he will know how to exploit that. So I think every Man United fan who was travelling to Craven Cottage on Sunday will be worried. Amorim won't admit it publicly, but he will be worried. It's a massive opportunity for Fulham to make a statement.
Janusz, 10th against 13th in the table. Times have changed. Manchester United at Fulham was a case of, well, that'll be a United win when they were flying and winning league titles and all sorts. It's not like that now. If Fulham don't win this, is it a disappointment for them? Do they expect to get all 3 points against a struggling Manchester United?
Yeah, they could say that. I mean, they've had a wonderful season, obviously. I mean, not maybe recently, 2 draws and a loss. And last game, obviously, they won. But, Leicester City, I suppose, these days, it's not a massive win. But I think they've shown before that how good they can be, especially at home. And you're playing against Manchester United team that, as Rob said, the problem with Manchester United, like we go back to it because they are Manchester United. There's still enough players there, you think, or, maybe Bruno Fernandes, as we've been saying, by far the best player. That goal is important for him, for Manchester United. That could be a catalyst the way, because it's not insignificant. I know how we feel about this league and Manchester United. Maybe, they should be playing in the Champions League, but, that may be the only way for them to get to the Champions League, right? Winning Europa League. They've done that recently. So that is important. But the problem I have with this Manchester United is that I don't even know who to trust on that team. I feel for Amorim, watching that game on Wednesday. I mean, imagine if even such an experienced player like Maguire makes a mistake like that late in a game, where, if it's not for Bruno Fernandes, they go out of top eight. I mean, so it's crazy to me. I don't know what to make of this Manchester United. I don't trust really any players on that team apart from Bruno Fernandes. Not one player I feel comfortable about. So imagine how Amorim must feel.
Yeah, Elemi, let's talk about United's goals. And look, they're an easy target when they're not playing well because they're such a big team. But we can also turn it around and we can say that since the Newcastle game just before the new year, Manchester United have scored in every game they've played in 2025. Now, we'll not get into the other end of the pitch with the defences. So the question to you was going to be, where are the goals coming from? Xerxes, Højlund. But they're finding a way, whether it's Bruno or whoever, to get goals. So where are the goals coming from at Fulham? And how do you stop, whether it's Jimenez or whoever is in attack for Fulham with their kind of cast of characters coming from midfield that can also score?
Yeah, I'm glad you ended with Fulham, because I'll take the baton here, because it's not just about Raúl Jimenez. Rob has said it, Janusz has said it. This is a very well-managed team by Marco Silva, and I think this is the kind of game that Anthony Robinson is going to have a field day. Because he's going to be able to have a lot of opportunities to put those balls in. By the way, a player like Harry Wilson as well, who's made 14 chances since the beginning of the new year. That's most out of any player. Not saying that all of them have gone behind the back of the net, but he's making a lot of chances. Iwobi as well can take advantage. I just go back to the fact that this is a match between recent history and form, because Manchester United actually enjoy playing Fulham. They've won the last 7. It's just that we're talking about this particular Manchester United. And to answer your questions about the goals, Janusz is correct. Bruno Fernandes, after him, they have to really just rely on this sort of collection of players that can make something happen. I mean, Licha Martinez had to turn himself into Juan Román Riquelme against Rangers with that cross. It's not like he does that all the time. Amad Diallo, of course, performing very well. So they're going to have to come up with ways to try and break them down, because Fulham are very well organized away from the ball as well. And at Craven Cottage, they haven't lost since November. They haven't won as many, but they haven't lost. They got that good point against Arsenal earlier on as well. So they're going to give them a fight. I see a situation here where United, just like Rob said, are preferring more so than not to play away from Old Trafford. And they could maybe salvage a point. But they're going to have to go against a very well-organized Fulham. And by the way, Ruben Amorim has never lost 7 in a season. And this could be it if they're not careful.
Rob, let's end this little bit talking about the transfer window in Manchester United. 10 days or so to go before it slams shut, because they never just close. So what's going to happen with Manchester United? Any potential ins? What about Garnacho? What about Rashford?
Well, they are trying to bring players in, but they need to get rid of players first. So we expect Anthony to join Real Betis on loan until the end of the season. That should free up a little bit of budget space. They're obviously trying to offload Marcus Rashford, but his wages are making that extremely difficult. The clubs who have expressed interest, Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund, Milan, have all kind of backed away because of the high money that's involved with trying to do that deal. That may be one that goes right down to the deadline day. If someone comes in and offers United a deal and they kind of become more flexible and lower their demands right at the last minute. There's also a possibility that Alejandro Garnacho could go. We asked Ruben Amorim after the Rangers game whether Garnacho would be at the club beyond the deadline, and he was very, very non-committal. He just said, look, guys, we're going to have to wait and see. I don't know. The bonus for United, if Garnacho was to go, is that as an academy graduate, all that would be pure profit. It would help United's finances immeasurably, and that maybe would allow them to go and do another couple of deals. That they are in talks with Lecce about a left-back, Patrick Dorgu, a Denmark international, which would help Amorim implement his system, because he just hasn't got any wing-backs to play this 3-4-3 system. And it's obvious to anyone that watches them that they need specialist wing-backs. So possibly that deal may get done towards the end of the window, but really that United's finances are so tight. They're really walking a tightrope in terms of PSR. So they need to get players out before they can look to bring players in.
Janusz, we move on to Wolves against Arsenal. It's one of these, you look at the table, you think Arsenal should win that, but it could be a bit of a banana skin, especially with Wolves tightening up at the back under their new coach since he came in. What did you make of Mikel Arteta's comments over the last 24 hours where he's talking about lacking goals and lacking options and may have to go into the transfer market to sign a striker?
Yeah, he's capitulated finally, hasn't he? I think, we kind of said it. We never know what's going to happen. Yeah, I mean, of course, we know that longer term and even now, I mean, it's still not inconceivable that they can join the fight, right? I mean, we're not talking about a massive difference. There's a game in hand. What is it, 6 points, I think, right now? So, I mean, you have to continue to win because the margins are very small. I think he understands, of course, that Kai Havertz never will be one. Anything that he does, it's a bonus, right? It's gravy, really, when you think about that. And given the fact that he's missing some key players in that line, it's no news to us. But I think, throughout, part of me thinks that he's managed, Arsenal in general have managed this fairly well because they have holes. And we were afraid to what was going to happen if the starting 11 get some injuries, because I think all of us here, I remember every one of you saying that the true depth of squad really wasn't there even before the season. And I think we're seeing that right now. And look, it's a funny game. LME is probably smirking there a little bit, but that remontada, I mean, that makes a difference. I worry more about now mentality of Arsenal after that game because we're talking differently here. Even the game against Brighton, they were ahead in that game, if I remember correctly, as well. 2 draws, not the end of the world, but with the way Liverpool are playing, I think in general, as a whole, Arsenal can score goals. I mean, if we're sitting here and saying, hey, Manchester United finds a way of scoring goals, then Arsenal is way above that.
LME, last word on this game, a fixture for Arsenal. They should win. There'll certainly be no complacency, but what threat can Wolves pose? Because there's been speculation about Matheus Cunha and a whole host of clubs have been linked with him. They've got some threats as well, haven't they?
Yeah, they're very talented. They're just, with all due respect, a struggling Wolves side that just can't do much because they've lost 18 of their last 20 Premier League matches against sides in the top 2 of the table. The Gunners have won their last 7 games against Wolves and are unbeaten in 12 straight in the Premier League. They haven't won a game this year, though, to be fair to Vitor Pereira. They played Forest, Newcastle, and Chelsea so far. So it's not exactly the easiest schedule. Now they have to face Arsenal. But there's internal issues as well. Mario Lemina wants out, and he's kind of given Pereira a little bit of a trouble. But they do have talent. I mean, Strand Larsen, he's just a little bit off from having some ridiculous goals in this season. He's just not quite there yet. And you mentioned him, Matheus Cunha, who reportedly at some point was a target for Arsenal as well. And you could see a situation maybe where, just on the counter, they break up and they score and they surprise Arsenal because, as Janusz rightly said, I was smirking. I wasn't smirking. I was laughing my head off when we got that equalizer against Arsenal because that they need to put games away and they just don't do it. And Mikel Arteta has already said it, and we've said it over and over again. I know that Trossard and Martinelli and Havertz will be able to be a band-aid on that gunshot wound, but they need a lethal striker. In this game, it might be tough in the first 15 minutes. Wolves might be up for it, but I think as the game prolongs, history will repeat itself. Arsenal will get the 3 points. This is not the kind of game I'm worried for Arsenal. It's other matches if you want to win the Premier League.
Okay, let's wrap up today's ESPN FC Live with a game where, I just don't know how Ipswich get something from this game. But you know what? That's why we play the 90 minutes. Ipswich go to Liverpool. It's been over 22 and a half years since they last went to Anfield, and they got beaten 5-0, right? So, okay. But the time before that, here's the BBC match report. Ipswich outclassed lackluster Liverpool. December 2000, Rob. And it was Marcus Stewart that got the winning goal as Gerard Houllier made 466 changes to his starting 11, and they were rubbish that day. So what's more likely? 5-0 Liverpool again, just like it was the last time Ipswich were there in the Premier League, or Ipswich doing a Nottingham Forest from earlier this season in September and shocking the English football community?
Far more likely that Liverpool win 5-0. They're going through a little bit of a wobble. I think 3 wins in the last 6 games, so a mini wobble by their standards. To be honest, given what happened to Ipswich against Man City last weekend, it's probably the perfect result or the perfect fixture for Liverpool to really start regaining their confidence. I think that Ipswich will be looking at that game with the best will in the world. Again, Kieran McKenna won't admit it, but he'll be looking at that game and thinking, we're not going to stay up dependent on results at Anfield and against Liverpool and Man City. They'll be looking at other games to get points. If they take something against Liverpool, it's a fantastic bonus, but their season won't be judged by what happens at Anfield. They'll take their defeat and move on.
Okay, how many, Rob, for Liverpool? How many goals?
3-0 Liverpool.
Janusz?
Yeah, that was my score in my head, 3-0.
LME?
I'll give Liverpool one more, 4-0.
Okay. Good luck to Ipswich at Anfield on Saturday. Full reaction to all the games this weekend at ESPN FC and, of course, every night on ESPN+. It is ESPN FC. Thank you for your company today. Janusz, safe travels. I know you're off to Europe to cover the last weekend of the Champions League, the last fixtures. And for everyone else, enjoy your football this weekend. We'll see you again soon. Bye for now.